Hi, my name is Steven and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to deal with work-life conflicts, a guide to dealing with difficult people. Have you ever had conflicts with someone in your work or life? Of course you have. We all have, but did you say or do something that made the situation far worse than it could have been? As I have navigated my working world, I've always learned something from each and every conflict that I'm a part of. And every one of these arguments has always frustrated me because both parties are trying to convince each other of something and no one's listening. These events leave me completely drained, and I also think about it many days after the event has happened. But as I've learned about various conflicts in my life, I know that if you come with a plan, you'll be much better off for it. You can either de-escalate the situation completely or prevent the situation from escalating further. So these are my tips on how to manage and deal with difficult people that cause conflicts in your life. Although there's many different strategies to deal with conflict, these are the ones that worked for me the best. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the background in conflict, my tips, and my general thoughts. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends, hit that notification bell if you like this content. And here we go. So dealing with people that might not be aligned with you is a very common occurrence in life. Arguments can stem from various different things. For example, miscommunication, different personality styles, and different goals. Even people that are normally calm, if you catch them on a bad day, can become argumentative as well. So at the end of the day, it's really a crapshoot on whether or not you're going to run into someone and have an argument with them. You just have to kind of be prepared for it. Throughout my dealings with many difficult people, I've learned that it starts and ends with how you react to it. For me, there's a line in the sand. If someone crosses that line, it's harder for me to react calmly and coolly to the situation. My goal throughout these last few years is to try to push that line farther and farther away so that I have more time and patience before I get triggered. This isn't easy. There's no magic bullet to fix this. You have to cultivate the patience and also deal with multiple frustrating experiences. You only get better by going through these conflicts and learning from them each and every time. Now here are my tips on dealing with frustrating people. Number 1, breathe in the moment. It seems very easy, but it's very hard to do when you're in a difficult situation. But when you're in a difficult conflict with someone else, be sure to take as long of a breath as you possibly can. This is because if we don't, our bodies get really tight and we start to get tunnel vision. We're losing that lack of oxygen to ourselves. And the longer it goes on, it tightens us into a fight or flight response with that other person. And ultimately, it doesn't help in de-escalating the situation where we want to bring it down further instead of enraging it. I have personally found this really challenging to do, especially if that person is staring at me right in the face. And because of how close we are to the person, it's really hard to take long, deep breaths during that time. But I try to notice the shallowness in which my breathing is and try to extend that breath each and every time afterwards. If you're on a call or writing an email, this is much easier to do to take longer breaths. And you definitely have the time and space to calm down before responding to that particular person. This ideally would be the best case scenario. It's much harder to do in person. So when you're dealing with a difficult person, make sure you're breathing in deeply and getting in all the oxygen that you need. And this allows your body and mind to calm down from the stress that it's currently in. Number 2, decide your response. How do you want to respond to the other person? Choose your own adventure carefully. I do not recommend you respond to every situation the same way, either aggressively or defensively. Your response has to be in proportion to the circumstances of your interaction with the other person. This means that if you're in a frustrating or difficult circumstance, one size fits all does not work and should not be applied. You need to decide whether or not you want to adamantly prove your point or concede your point and defuse the situation entirely. There will be times in which case you just won't win your conflict, no matter how well you present yourself or present the facts. And there will be other times when you need to win that certain situations in order to get the other person to back down. This can really help if you don't want the other person taking advantage of you or the situation. In my experience, being able to distinguish when to apply pressure and when to back down is the key to resolving conflicts. Because when you start to understand people and their archetypes, you can actually gain respect from the person that you're in conflict with. This is regardless if you're in a positive or negative interaction with that person. Because certain responses to conflict can prove to the other person that you're actively listening and you're willing to negotiate with them on the terms of that conflict. And if you're very experienced at this, you can actually benefit from each conflict you encounter. For example, price and salary negotiations are one way you can benefit from conflict. So this tip is ultimately going to need a lot of experience for you to gauge properly, but starting out, you need to know your own rules of engagement. Do you want to prove your point or concede your point during this particular conflict? Know this. Number 3, what is their perspective? Something that I always try to do after a difficult situation is to put myself in their shoes. What is causing the conflict from their perspective? This helps me to understand their perspective, helps me to humanize them, and also have empathy for their situation. Because you ultimately might not be the cause of why you're in this conflict with them in the first place. They might just have a bad day, or something else that's causing them to have a short fuse with you. I start to visualize the stress that they might be currently under and the pressures of that job, whatever they're doing. Or possibly a hurt ego that they might have because I called them out and caused the conflict. And then I ask myself, if I was in their position, would I get angry at what I did? This is the key for me to unlock my own anger and lessen it from my side. This activity really helps because when we're in conflict, we tend not to see the other person as human. It's just a battle that we need to win. This means that we sometimes choose to forget the motivating factors that's causing the conflict in the first place. And the situation or conflict might not be related to you in any way at all. So when you're dealing with challenging people, look at it from their perspective and have empathy for their situation, because it can help you craft a better response to de-escalate this situation. Number 4, listening is key. If I had a Bitcoin every time I didn't listen to people during an argument, I'd be very, very rich. Listening to the other person that you're in the argument with is the key to disarming them and getting to the root of the problem. In life, we all want to be heard, and if we're not being heard, we can take that very, very personally. Actively listening not only helps you to understand their situation better, but it also prevents you from the need to react to something that they've said. The toughest battle that I've always fought is when both parties were not listening to each other at all. We both wanted to be right and we never conceded a point. That caused a stalemate in which nothing got done. But in the end, we both lost because we never resolved the situation in the first place. It made the relationship between the two of us terrible and unamenable. When you listen to the other person, truly, in the moment, you become like a third person to that argument. You're no longer within your own body. It's like you're no longer an active combatant. You're listening to the situation from a different perspective, so that you can address their concerns or issues more effectively, or you can create more effective counterpoints to their claims. Either way, it's in your best interest to listen to them during a conflict. So I know it can be hard, but try your best to listen to someone during a conflict. You'll be glad you did. Number 5, you can't win them all. Lastly, some battles just aren't worth winning. You gotta learn to let that one go. Learn which battles are worth fighting for, and those battles that you can learn to concede. This is very brutal on the ego, so make sure whatever battle that you're conceding that you mean it. Or else you'll regret it and resent your decision later down the line, causing possibly more arguments. Because sometimes, more often than not, you can inadvertently cause more battles and conflicts in the future if you keep going at it. Especially if the conflict or battle wasn't even important to you in the first place. Expanding on the previous point of deciding a response, sometimes a valid response is to not do anything at all. What this means is you don't engage from the conflict and you just back out from it. I have been in many petty and frustrating arguments throughout my life that ended up stressing me out and giving me gray hairs, all really for nothing. Both sides gets worked up for nothing, and at least for me, I have a lot of sleepless nights from that. And during that time, it can affect my mood from days to weeks, depending on the conflict. If I had learned to let go of that conflict, I would have saved a lot of time and energy in the process. This is a hard tip to follow because depending on your personality, you might not be able to concede without a hit to your ego. If that's the case, I would start off with small conflicts that you're able to lose without a hit to your ego. And lose on purpose and work your way up to harder conflicts that you might not be able to win. And as you slowly gain and experience this, you're going to realize that nothing bad happens to you if you concede or lose a conflict. You can use this as a game in which the end goal is for you to not get frustrated very easily and be able to concede battles. Because at the end of the day, we're always going to deal with frustrating and difficult people throughout our lives. There's no need to fight every single conflict or battle with them. You need to be able to see the bigger picture of what really matters to your life. So here are my general thoughts on dealing with difficult people. Underlying all of these discussions is the fact that egos are hurt in the process of conflicts. Sometimes we just can't afford to lose because it makes us feel bad or unconfident in ourselves. It has definitely been hard for me to lose certain battles or conflicts in my life, especially when I feel like I was in the right, but preserving peace is more important than my ego. But here's the thing, the more experience I had with dealing with certain conflicts, the better I was at suppressing my own ego. I basically learned how to feel less bad about myself with each conflict that I conceded. And over the years, I've become more and more comfortable about the fact of losing battles. Just know that dealing with people is a lifelong process and no human is perfect in it. The goal is to deal with difficult people and circumstances as smoothly as possible, avoiding to escalate the situation at every turn. But know that it's okay to make mistakes on the way and just learn from that experience going forward. So those are my tips on dealing with conflict throughout work and life. No one will be perfect when you're in a conflict with another person, but how you navigate that conflict with difficult people will be an invaluable skill for you to have. And it's something that has a wide range of benefits beyond dealing with conflicts in life. Learning to be a better person through conflict involves picking the right response, looking at it from their perspective, and actively listening to them. With these tips, you're truly able to deal with difficult people and conflicts, as well as lessen the negative impacts to you as well. So thank you for watching. Please leave me a comment down below on what do you do to deal with conflict and how do you de-escalate the situation. And I'll see you next time.